I'm originally born here in Greenville, South Carolina, but spent most of my life outside of Greenville, mostly in the north. And when I retired, I decided not to go back north, but to come back home. And when I came back home, I didn't really know what I would do in terms of my spare time, which I had obviously plenty of. And then I recalled that my grandmother was buried at Richland Cemetery and two of my cousins. And as a result, I decided I would try to get involved in doing whatever I could to at that point, really to do much needed improvement in Richland Cemetery. We have about 81 of approximately 1,400 persons buried in the cemetery. About 81 of them are veterans, and we have a program every year, and we'll again this year. So we welcome you all out to that particular program as well. A number of the people that I knew as a child growing up here in Greenville between 1937 until 1944 when I left, family took me out of here. It's a final resting place of many blacks who have made significant contributions to the city of Greenville. By undertaking these projects, and there are many others that need to be done, it has begun to bring back that area in general. We're hoping it is referred to and recommendations are made for work to be done that relates to the Stone Avenue Master Plan, and which for economic development and residential development along that main drag. And if the work at the cemetery is done, that would enhance the Stone Avenue development as well. There are a number of historic or black cemeteries here in Greenville, which unfortunately some of them are in disrepair, and I just, because of my family ties, because of my background, especially within the Park Service and in Parks and Recreation, I felt that I wanted to devote my time to those things. Okay. Well, I've kind of slowed down. That's one of the reasons I got here. And now, I guess about, my wife would tell you I go every day to it, one way or the other, being on the phone with people, but I would say thirds of my active time, in terms of community work.
Mr. O'Neill at the time was very active, and he got me to come over and met me at the cemetery, and it hadn't been cared for really properly. The grounds were in bad condition. There were some limbs that were down from the trees, and just general maintenance work that had to be done. And as Mr. O'Neill mentioned in his comments, that there were days that the Richland Cemetery Board would go out and do a cleanup day, and they would look for assistance. Some would come from the city and others would come from volunteers. But that was the first look that I had at the cemetery and said, we can do better than this. Mr. O'Neill should not have to be and the board should not have to be asking for just for these fundamental services. Mr. O'Neill is the squeaky wheel for Richland Cemetery. He mentioned that even when he was off the board, he attended most of the meetings, if not all the meetings of the board. And he would call me regularly to make sure that I was still doing what I was supposed to do, even though he was off the board. But he was very influential in that regard, is that he would call me up and say, I'm being a pest, and I'm sorry I'm being a pest, and that's not how I looked at him at all. He was really very kind to me, and he was really very influential in the way that how he presented the issues at Richland Cemetery. He is one of my favorite people to work with in Greenville because he is understated, and you can see by how he's interviewed that I know him a little better, so he laughs a little more than with me. But he does have a serious side, and he's very intent about what he wants to get done, and that's why we've had those successes at Richland Cemetery over the last few years. But again, one of the things that impressed me the most about Mr. O'Neill is that he asked for my time more than he asked for my money. He asked me to come and understand what the work was what was going on at Richland Cemetery before he asked me for money. Now, he did ask for money. He's like, that's part of the job of any nonprofit organization, is to try to find the resources to fund their project. But he really wanted to make sure that I understood what was going on at Richland Cemetery and the work that needed to be done. And the results are on the ground. Richland Cemetery looks very different today because of Mr. O'Neill.
People just take it for granted that something's going on or not going on as far as the cemetery is concerned. This way we were able to bring it out to the public in general.